Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Burlingame. It's a small-town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and my guest today, Bill Reilly, was born and raised in San Francisco, graduated from Sacred Heart High School, and attended City College of San Francisco. He entered in the Army in 1967, serving in the infantry in Vietnam. He returned home in 1969 and married his high school sweetheart, Nancy Rivers. As his journey continued, he was hired by Chief Reginald Morby of the Burlingame Fire Department. In 1997, Bill was appointed Fire Chief of Burlingame. In 2004, after the merger with the Hillsborough and Burlingame Fire Departments, he was appointed Chief of the newly formed Central County Fire Dept. In December of 2006, Bill retired and since then has been working in emergency management. And now my conversation with former Fire Chief Bill Reilly. Bill, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Mark.
Hey, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with a little bit of a wow, okay? Because I said, when I read your bio that you sent over, you were in Vietnam, 67 and 68?
Right.
2 years in the infantry?
Infantry,
in Vietnam.
9th Infantry, yeah.
How old were you, like 19 or 20?
20 years old. Yeah.
To me, that's a wow, man. That was the peak of the war. It was pretty intense.
It was.
And you're doing the infantry, man, so you're carrying a rifle or whatever, rocket launcher, whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pretty intense stuff. And you left Nancy at home. She was your high school sweetheart. Is that correct?
Right. We started going together our senior year in high school.
Yeah, but she wasn't at Sacred Heart because that was all boys at that time.
Right. She was St. Paul's girl.
St. Paul's.
Yeah.
St. Paul's high school?
High school, yeah.
Is that still around?
It closed.
It did?
Yeah, it's closed. They still have... She goes to their annual get-togethers, with all the girls in her class.
Terrific.
Actually, they have a number of them they do.
Yeah.
Get together. Their sister went there, too. She was 2 years behind her.
So what year did you graduate from Sacred Heart? 65?
65.
Yeah, I thought so. Amazing, man. I mean, when you were in Vietnam, were you sitting there thinking to yourself, what the hell am I doing here? Huh? I mean, did that ever cross your mind?
Yeah. It was very challenging times.
It had to be.
Yeah.
Were you drafted?
Yes.
Yeah. What was your number?
I didn't have a number. It was before they had numbers.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Okay.
I go back a few years.
Bill, I am right there with you, so it's okay. Thank you for your service.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, it had to be kind of miserable when you came home. I mean, you come home and see your family, of course, and Nancy, but I don't know how accepting this country was.
We got through it.
We got through it, and we're going to just push it aside.
We're
going to go to the fun facts, okay?
Yeah, I'd rather move forward.
Yeah, but again, thank you for the service, huh? Okay. So a couple of fun facts that I'd like to share with our listeners. You, as a great father and a Burlingame guy and everything, thought you should volunteer for AYSO because AYSO soccer, because I guess probably your daughters were playing and you wanted to be a volunteer and all that good stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, my son was the first one.
Oh, the son.
I have a son
Right.
and two daughters, yeah.
So you being the big brave guy thinks, okay, I'll volunteer and I'll do whatever I have to do, set some cones out or line the field or something. But they say you are going to be the coach, right? And I don't think you knew anything about soccer. Is that correct?
Didn't have a clue.
Didn't have a clue. I
don't think I ever touched a soccer ball.
Never played in
that.
high school or any. And I don't even know if they had soccer.
No, we didn't. Baseball,
we didn't have
football,
soccer.
basketball.
No. So that was like, okay, that's going to be a very quick learning curve, right?
Yeah.
But you survived.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, we had 6th Division AYSO. My son was 6 years old at the time. You know, the little guys running around.
And they wore those
I got the
cute
book out
little
trying to
uniforms.
figure out what we're doing,
Right. Did you continue to coach over the years?
I coached for quite a few years, yeah. I coached my son and both my daughters.
That's awesome, Bill.
So,
yeah. Okay, fun fact two, and I'm going to start it, but I'm actually going to let you kind of finish it because it has to be in your own words, all right?
Sure.
So fun fact two is that your early days of being a firefighter, you were out on a call, you were driving the truck, is that correct?
That's right.
And you scooted right by the address of the place you were supposed to stop at, okay? Is that right?
That's correct.
In other words, you didn't stop at the right spot, you went a little bit farther on, I guess.
Yeah, well, we got the call, and the address came in as 250 El Camino.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the middle of the block. I blow by the corner. The corner address is 250 El Camino. So I realized we'd stop, So I got to back up. I turned to the captain and said, got to back up, and the tailboard guy that goes right in the back, he had jumped off. So I start backing up, and the captain just started to open the door. So I'm looking in my driver's side mirror. I don't see anything. I do in the other door mirror, and it's facing the building at this point. Mm-hmm. And I go, is it clear? And I'm backing up because we're, medical call. We're trying to get in there. I look over to the tailboard guy that's standing on the sidewalk, and he's got his hands in front of his face.
Oh, boy.
I go, slam on the brakes. At that point, I hit the push bars on the patrol car behind me and put them right through the radiator.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, Jim Hennessy was at the time, the officer at the time. Jim, a good guy.
It was Reg Morby the chief at that time?
Reg Morby was chief, yeah. I spent a little time writing that accident report.
That's one of those embarrassing moments, but it's a fun story to tell, right? That's great.
Right.
Hey, can I ask you something about that, though? When I was thinking about it, obviously all the trucks must have GPS today, right?
I mean, the technology's advanced so much.
So when you got that call for 250 El Camino, you were leaving probably California Drive?
That's correct.
El Camino's easy to find, but what about some of these other streets in Burlingame? How would you get there? Did you guys have maps or something? How did you know where you were going?
We had maps, but we didn't. When we got hired, the first thing we had to do was memorize all the streets. Memorize the maps. We had map tests. Before we could go online, we went through our 3-month academy, and we had tests. They give you a blank map, and you had to fill in all the streets and the numbering and everything else. So.
Amazing. Hey, these guys got it made now, huh?
Oh,
with that GPS stuff.
They do a lot more now than I do.
I'm sure of that. But wow. All right, I'm going to have you take us through this journey a little bit, and we're going to go back to your time when you're coming home from Vietnam. Like I said in the opener, you married Nancy in, 1969?
69, we married, yeah.
And where did everything go from there? You didn't immediately join the fire department, right?
No. At that point, I came back. When I'd gone to City College, I was in criminology. I was going to be a police officer. Uh-huh. My godfather, So.
Right.
Anyway, come back in Vietnam, I changed my mind about a lot of things. In any case, at that point, I was influenced by some other friends in the family that were firefighters, and they said, "No, look at it, Bill." So I started taking tests, and I was originally I wanted to work in San Francisco. I grew up in San Francisco.
Sure. Did you know anybody in San Francisco that was a firefighter that could?
Oh yeah. We had close friends that were firefighters and stuff. Okay. Bill Murphy was one of the things, old timer. In fact, Bill's. Was real close to Jiggy McGrath.
Oh, gosh, Jiggy, I sure do.
Yeah.
He walked the city all the time in retirement. Walked, yeah.
But anyway, so I started taking tests around, and I put my application in, and I'm taking tests all over the peninsula as well as San Francisco. I put my application in. I get a call from my mother's girlfriend who was in personnel in San Francisco, and she goes, "Bill, I see your application came in." I go, "Yeah, Dorothy, thanks. I'm looking forward to it." Mm-hmm. Well, Nancy and I were living in an apartment in Daly City at the time. She goes, "There's a residency requirement. You can't. I had to pull your application. You'll get in trouble."
And why was that?
And I go, "Because there's a residency requirement to take the test." I go, "I put my mom's address on it." She goes. Anyway, long story short, I didn't go to work in San Francisco.
Right.
But I did eventually. I took tests in a number of the cities around and. It was interesting. I finally, San Mateo I passed, and Mountain View was on his list, and Burlingame. Burlingame was the first one that called me.
Yeah.
2 days later, 2 weeks later, Mountain View calls me, and then eventually. Anyway, I ended up in Burlingame.
Right.
And I think of now, I look back on it, Sacred Heart produced a lot of cops and firemen.
Yeah.
And a lot in San Francisco. But I talked to the guys there, and their career, my career, I enjoyed my career a lot more than theirs.
Oh, I bet. I mean, you
I look back, and it's not that it's bad. It's just the camaraderie and stuff is certainly all there. But, working in a smaller community, especially with some of the people that I came with, Charlie Cook, my mentor.
You had terrific guys that you worked with, Earl Higgins.
Yeah, Earl.
Right?
Bezekny. I mean, you look back at some of these old-timers that, they really set the bar.
And even the younger guys that came along, Kirk Snodgrass.
Oh, Kirk, yeah. Kirk was hired a year after me.
And what about, I still call him Bill Wilson, the late, great Bill Wilson.
Bill Kaharski.
Bill Kaharski came along, right?
Right, yeah.
And it was a different kind of crew. It's a wonderful crew today. They still come to the store and all that, you know what I mean? But with the merger, things have changed. I mean, faces have changed, and it's just a different
changed,
situation.
And the working conditions changed a lot.
Yeah.
We all lived fairly close. I had to live with, like I said, my wife and I were living in Daly City at the time.
Yeah.
And we had to move because that was too far away. We had to be within 15 minutes
Right.
of response time to the
So
city.
that was something I was interested in because I think it's different today, and we'll talk about that in a minute. When you came to Burlingame, you were living here. How many of the other guys at the station were actually living in Burlingame?
Living in Burlingame.
Yeah.
There was a number of them.
Yeah.
Burlingame, San Mateo, close within, 15, 20 minutes.
Right. Like I knew that Earl Higgins was here. Charlie Cook was here.
All
of
the
course.
old-timers, yeah.
Right. And but that's certainly changed over the years. So you mentioned you went to the fire academy?
A number of fire academies.
Oh, you did?
In-house academy, but the after I got online and stuff, I started a career. But for advancement, there's, to promote through, there's certain certification requirements and stuff. So I attended State Fire Academy, pardon me, and then I got certified as I going up as fire officer, as a chief officer, and so on. You go through all this fire inspector. I took a number of series going through that because at one point I was working in fire prevention.
Right.
So
Was Pearson the fire inspector when you were there? Was he gone?
Howard Pearson. Yeah.
Howard Pearson. Yeah, he was a neighbor over in Howard Avenue.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
That's funny. Okay, so you became a firefighter in Burlingame 1972. How long were you a firefighter? Well, tell me the journey as a firefighter up the ranks. You know what I mean? What came after firefighter?
I was firefighter 72. When fire inspector, 1980, 81, something like that. But as a fire inspector at that time, you worked a shift. Yeah, I stayed on the shift. You work on the end. During the day, 8 to 5, I'd be out in the car and then come back and I'd be on the engine or truck, whatever, the rest of the shift.
And just for the listeners out there, fire inspectors went mostly businesses, right?
At that time, we did, that and multifamily. We do apartment houses and things.
Oh, is that right? So you have a list of places. I mean, somebody sets up a list where you're going to be headed to, like you're going to go to Burlingame Avenue, then around the block to Molly Stone's or whatever, right?
We had a box the cards for each one of the occupancies, and we'd go through that box once a year. You're supposed to go through it. Yeah,
I remember the inspections well, and I have to say that Kirk always took an envelope on the side, but no, everybody was very. Very cool about it. You know what I mean? Giving us plenty of time to correct things, because the biggest thing in a supermarket is clutter. You're blocking certain areas, and so.
You had a good market, though, Mark.
Thank you, Bill.
I always enjoyed going in.
Thank you.
I still do.
Good man, Bill. Okay, so you progressed from fire inspector to what? Captain would be next?
Fire captain in 1985.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I worked there, and it was exciting at that point because we started out. Well, the department early on, we run engines and trucks, right? But the way we staffed them was kind of sporadic. We had a fire captain at each station. Station in California Drive at that time was called Station Number 1.
I know that.
That was now Station 34.
Yeah, it gets confusing.
Part of the county-wide program.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an engine, a squad, and a truck, and we ran all three pieces out of one officer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So depending upon what the call was, the officer would be either on the squad or the engine or whatever it might be. But we didn't have a separate officer for the truck company, which we developed. And that's one of the things I was able to be involved in when I first made captain is we developed a truck captain position.
Yeah.
Which became more formalized where we did, because when we formalized what a truck work is, doing rescue, ventilation, and things like that, more specialized as compared to the engine companies.
So back in the day, was there more than one? Well, it was a 24-hour shift, right? For how many days in a row? A couple of days in a row? How did that work?
No, at that time, the way the cycle worked when I first got hired is it was on actually the original cycle was a 58-hour week, and you would work a day on, a day off, a day on, a day off, a day on, and then 3 days off. And every third cycle, instead of 3 days, you'd get 5 days off.
Okay, wow, that's a lot.
It was a screwy thing.
Yeah.
And then they changed after I was there about 2 or 3 years. Went to a 56-hour week, and that it was a 9-day cycle, which working the first, third, and fifth days off the 2nd and 4th, and then 4 days in a row off.
Man, that's a real scheduling. I don't want to call it nightmare, but it sounds like a scheduling nightmare to me. Man,
Well, it worked out fine. It's you always look at the calendar at the beginning of the year to find out when you're working as far as holidays and everything goes, and that's when you got to start talking to the little lady of the house and telling them why you're not going to be there for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever.
I know yep, absolutely. So back, and we're going to talk Burlingame specific just for a moment before we get to the Central County. Burlingame had and still has 3 stations, correct?
Yes.
California, Hillside,
right,
and Rollins.
Although today, Hillside and California Drive are staffed companies, an engine and a truck in California Drive and an engine on Hillside. The engine on Rollins Road was closed down about 7 years ago after the merger.
And it still is?
It is. It's reopening in May.
Because of the growth of the city?
Well, yeah, part of it's a growth. A study was done, with the new department, the Central County Fire laid out the response levels and everything else. And I'll explain the responses now as compared to what it was before.
Right.
It really impacted that area. So they have received a grant, and with the grant, they're able to reopen that station.
Great. And how many firemen or are over on Rollins?
Well, Rollins Road will be three: a captain and an engineer and a paramedic.
Okay.
And that's true of all the engine companies. Paramedics on every engine and on the truck, as a matter.
Where was your office as chief?
Mine was on Rollins Road. When I was fire chief, it was always Rollins Road. When they opened Station 3 at that time, in the early 60s, Reg Morby had his office put there. That was...
Which, again, was on Rollins Road.
Was on Rollins Road as part of the fire station, yeah.
Okay. All right, going back now just to your, movement up the ranks, you were captain for how long?
3 years.
3 years, and then what?
Assistant chief.
Assistant chief. And was Reg Morby still the chief at that time?
No, he was not, no. In fact, Reg Morby retired in 76, so it was 4 years after I got there. Him and Charlie retired about the same time.
No kidding.
Charlie Cook,
yeah. So who was chief?
When I became captain, Malcolm Towns,
right?
Who had
Malcolm,
he had been the fire marshal prior to that.
Right. I remember some of these names from Charlie and Kirk and Bill and all of that. Tom Ames, of course. Was Tom Ames around when you were there?
Oh yeah.
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 And Tom finished as a captain, I think, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So then you're assistant chief to Malcolm.
Right. Correct.
And then Malcolm decides to resign, not resign, retire.
He retired, yeah.
Yeah.
He retired in 1997.
Yeah, and that's when you came along?
And that's when I became fire chief. Yeah.
Did you know that was going to happen?
I never expected to be fire chief.
Oh, boy, he says that tongue-in-cheek, okay?
I believe me. You look back in your career and things you enjoyed. I mentioned earlier about establishing a truck company.
Yeah.
That was so much fun for me.
I bet.
We used to call them the knuckle draggers. These guys did the heavy lifting, right?
Right.
And it was fun. I mean, it was fun. We did some great stuff. We worked with other cities to develop the program. And so it was fun to do. But, then you get up into administrative responsibilities. As assistant chief, I worked as a training officer, as a fire marshal, as administrative chief. And this whole time living in town, I was on call all the time. So,
absolutely. Did you work mostly out of, we'll call it Station 1, but I'm going to just, for the listeners, California Drive?
As a firefighter and captain most of the time I was there, yeah.
Yeah, and then chief, you were over on Rollins.
Right.
Did you ever spend any time up on Hillside?
Yeah. Actually, second year I was in the department. I was up there for a year. Didn't like it. It's too slow up there.
Yeah, and it's only 3 guys, right? And so you better get along.
Yeah, it's right next door to Bob Ezekny's house, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
A retired captain.
Is he still with us?
Passed away.
He did. Yeah, I bet you a lot of the old guard
a few
has.
years ago, yeah.
Okay, all right. What year did you retire?
2006.
2006, and you became chief in 7. Is that right? 97?
97.
Yeah. So 7 years you were the chief, right? Did I get that right?
That's no, actually about 9.5 years.
Oh, 9.5. Wow, where's my math? I'm with Sarah. That's the problem. Okay, so about 9.5, almost 10 years as chief.
Right.
What was the year that the merger came? The merger being Hillsborough and Burlingame.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a little background on it.
Yeah.
We started, actually, in the early 90s, we were trying to merge departments. And we were working with Millbrae, San Mateo, Burlingame, and Hillsborough, trying to get it to
The
come
four
together.
of you together.
Four agencies
Yeah.
coming together. We're looking at all the complications that have come up, all the things, the problems to solve to bring these agencies together, and has to do with politics, union rights, all these things coming together. One of the things that became very apparent at the time is efficiency of a department. What do you need? How many chiefs do you need? How many officers and so much for the service you're going to provide? San Mateo at this time was running out of 6 stations with 7 companies, 6 engines and a truck and a battalion chief. That was a pretty efficient, manageable position, size to have. And so really when we looked at the numbers, there wasn't a lot for them to gain or lose. So they kind of fell away. At the same time...
So they were okay on their own.
And they were okay with their own.
Right.
But at that time, Burlingame and Hillsborough got along very well. Millbrae we got along with, but they were in more of a financial crunch than thing. Their firefighters made a lot less than Burlingame and Hillsborough did too. So there was a problem with it. So initially when we merged, the merger went through without Millbrae, which is Burlingame and Hillsborough. And it worked out well because the councils of both cities got along very well. The management people in both cities got along very well. But bringing the firefighters together, and each agency has their own culture, And
Yeah.
that was a part of the challenge, bringing it together. And one of the things I was really concerned with when we started the merger is making sure that we became the Central County Fire Department and not the Burlingame and Hillsborough entities within a department.
Yeah.
So
calling it Central County.
Central County. That's one of the
brings
things.
it together, like.
Yeah, we wanted to bring it together. This
Yeah.
is a new agency. We're serving the cities that we're serving, but
Okay, so number-wise, when you became the chief, you were the chief of Burlingame first, obviously, then the merger came along. How many firemen did you have at that time at Burlingame?
Just as Burlingame,
Uh-huh.
we were about, I'm trying to remember the time, about 50 to 60.
Right.
It varied. It depended on
Okay,
what
and then when you merged with Hillsborough, how many more did you pick up?
you picked up about another 20, 25.
So you were running about 70 guys, give or take.
Yeah, give or take. And it was, and at that time, during the merger process in the first year or two, we're trimming down. So we actually were overstaffed a bit initially.
So trimming down, but not laying off. You're trimming down by when somebody retires, you don't rehire.
We did not have to lay anybody off.
That's
and
great.
that worked out really great.
Yeah.
We closed a station. Hillsborough had 3 stations. We had, Burlingame had 3 stations.
Right.
They had a station right by Town Hall, at
Yeah.
Floribunda.
Uh-huh.
And we also had the station on California Drive.
Yeah.
Very close together.
Right.
So duplication of service right there, that service level.
So the one in Hillsborough closed.
Yeah, eventually closed one in Hillsborough.
How did you make that decision? Who made that decision?
We spent some time doing that because, as you know, the taxpayers are very proud of their city and everything that they provide. So we did a study, and what we did initially is we brought it together. We would close Hillsborough for a day, and then the next day we would close Burlingame.
Oh, really?
And reopen Hillsborough.
How long did that go on for?
We did it for 6 months.
Yeah.
To look at the response times and everything else, and it was almost the same as before.
Bet.
Because I drove it before we even did it. It was a 50-second drive from one station to the other if I did hit the light.
No kidding.
So the response, that duplication, that overlap of coverage.
Sure.
And the call volume at the time for Hillsborough was very low. And the Burlingame station on California Drive was pretty decent call volume, but easily absorbed the few calls I had there as well, spread with the other stations.
Yeah. Did dispatchers work out of Burlingame?
Initially, we had our own dispatch center. We had fire dispatch only when I first got hired out of the Rollins Road station.
Uh-huh.
And it was on weekends and Sundays sometimes when the dispatcher rotation, when they had a day off, firefighters would have to sit on the dispatch panel. We called it had to sit in the hole.
Right, sit in the hole.
Sit in the hole, right. We'd sit there and have to dispatch.
So you'd have to schedule for that, though, correct?
Yeah, so we'd have to pull one of the firefighters off the line and be
Right.
sitting there for that period of time.
Yeah. Was that something that nobody really wanted to
Nobody
do?
wanted to
Yeah.
do it. Because you get a call, you want to go to the call.
You want to go to the call. Yeah. Okay. Does Hillsborough still just have 2 stations?
They do now, yes.
Yeah. One is way up top, right?
One's up on Station 33, up on top of
It's up by 280.
Ralston and
Yeah.
Skyline. The other one's down on Ascot, down in the south end.
Right. And that's enough to cover it.
Yeah. Well, what we did though, to that coverage is as we progressed through, we did our merger. Prior to that, we instituted paramedic firefighters in all the engines countywide, and we did that to make sure the coverage was right. We dropped all our boundaries. We worked on an operational plan, so operationally, the entire San Mateo County worked as one department. And at that time, we had moved all dispatch to Redwood City for fire.
Right. So the person is in Redwood City calling the shots, right?
They dispatched the closest unit.
Yeah. What about the unincorporated part of Burlingame? Where's it up by 280 or
Burlingame
something?
Hills.
Burlingame Hills. You would respond to calls there because you had to, right? How did that work?
It was interesting, in the early days, get back into who pays the bill, right?
Yeah.
Who pays the bill? But life safety was another thing. If there was a medical call, we would go. All right, they would dispatch us.
Okay.
They would back us up by their response was coming from Belmont County Fire.
Wait a minute. If my hair is on fire and I'm calling in, the guy's coming from Belmont and you guys are just down the street?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
The original, and I recall this now, we had a fire in county area at that time. It came in, the fire was burning, our engine was across the street. We could not go until their unit was on scene.
Oh, my gosh. What year was that, give or take?
That was 1970.
70
yeah,
something.
whatever.
Okay.
Anyway, we worked through this. Smart heads finally got together, and this isn't right.
Right.
So that became the other option was if there was a life hazard, you can go in.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I've gone into, I'd go up there to a fire, and I said, your kid's still inside?
Yeah, oh, right.
We'll go get them.
Good point.
No, we're all out.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
I can hear somebody in there, right? How long did that go on for before it got changed?
That went on for a few years, and we finally got a contract together where we provided first-in services.
Right.
And it wasn't a lot, but it was enough to offset our calls, in a reasonable way.
Yeah.
And that just made it a lot smoother. And that was all dropped. Once we responded countywide with a paramedic program, all that went away because we sent the closest unit.
So now it's just if there is a problem up in the Burlingame Hills, you respond, no matter what it is.
Whatever the unit is, it could be a South San Francisco fire engine, it'll go to it if they're the closest
No
one.
kidding. That's very cool. Okay, we're going to go back in history again. Sure. When you first started out, or when did women come along in the fire departments? What year, give or take?
As firefighters, I'm sure you're talking, because we've had some lovely ladies working in the office.
Right, as firefighters, absolutely.
But I'm trying to remember, the first one would probably late 80s. Yeah, it was late 80s. In fact, I was assistant chief when the first one came.
Yeah.
First one.
As I was preparing this, I was thinking to myself, that probably was a little disruptive in a sense that, if it's all guys, all men, Station 1 on California, and now you have a lady, where would she sleep? Because you spent 24 hours, right? Where would she have to have separate quarters or anything like that?
At that time, no.
No.
We got it. The preparation for it was pretty intense.
I bet.
I mean, if you look at my wife used to give me a bad time, you're not going to work, you go into the old boys club, and because we joked around a lot of stuff at work, you can imagine, the good times we've had, but serious at times. But when it came time to, stand down a little bit,
right,
and have fun. But we had to develop, policies for it, which we did, and it worked out pretty well. There's just codes. There were separate bath facilities. We had to identify, so on. But now everything's pretty neutral. When we rebuilt the station, I'm sure you're going to get into that on California Drive. Mm-hmm. We made everything unisex. You go into the bathrooms, there's the sinks and everything, but each one of the showers is compartmentized. You close the door, you go take your shower and stuff. You get dressed and everything in there.
Yeah.
Same thing with the in the commodes. Same thing. They're isolated. So
great.
Yeah, and that's the way all the things were handled after that.
When you became chief, how many women firefighters did you have, if you can remember that?
At that time, I think we had 3. In fact, 1 captain.
I remember Julie was the fire inspector. Was she there when you were there, or was she come after you?
I hired her.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, one of my best hires.
Yeah, terrific girl.
Great gal.
I think, did she retire?
No, she's still going at it. She's a deputy fire marshal now.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Moving right on up. Good for her.
Yeah.
Real pleasant lady.
Yeah.
So you don't remember how many you had, give or take?
Yeah, there were only a few. We had trouble keeping them.
Yeah.
Because you get a good woman to come in and be doing a great job, and then we're a small department. They go on. We had San Francisco got some.
Yeah. And when you say you lose them, are you losing them because of pay or pregnancy or what? I mean,
no. We lost one on disability.
Yeah.
But we lost one to San Francisco, another one to where'd she go? San Ramon. And I'm trying to think of different places.
And the reasons could be probably location, buying
part
a home.
Of its location. I know what San Ramon had to do. That's housing was cheaper over there.
Right,
and,
right. Okay. And I'm kind of moving around here, so bear with me. Going back to the merger, you mentioned that Millbrae didn't get involved, right?
At that point.
Are they in it now?
They are now, yeah. It took, actually it was after I retired, they eventually came around and they worked out. Millbrae came in, they're a contract city with Central County Board. So the Joint Powers Authority of Burlingame, Hillsborough, forming Central County Fire Department, a contract service to Millbrae.
Okay.
So Millbrae firefighters at that point, when they did that, were hired by Central County Fire Department.
So does that mean everybody is getting more or less the same pay as entry level?
Exactly the same.
So it's one union taking care of everybody like that?
They're all the same.
Yeah. Did you work with just one union only, or did you have to work with other unions within the department? I don't know.
Yeah, when we first formed, we had 3 different unions at that point. But we got them in. That was one of the things we had to bring together, is bring them into one organization. And make sure that everything. One of the issues that comes up, many cities have different pay scales, benefit packages, and so on.
Right.
Trying to standardize that was another issue.
Yeah. Who was city manager when you were the chief? Was it Dennis?
Dennis Argis appointed me chief. Yeah.
And he did, yeah.
He did, yeah.
Good guy. And then
great guy.
And Jim Nantel came along?
And Jim came after him. I was very fortunate. I had 2 great city managers to work for.
I'll say you did.
As well as Tony Constantouris in Hillsborough was another great guy to work with. Yeah.
That's great. Bill, the one thing I wanted to ask you is you set sort of a precedent when you merged the departments, right? Hillsborough, Burlingame, and then Millbrae came along, and there's a lot of reasons why he did that, but I'm sure, obviously was not wasting time and effort and all of that and payroll or whatever. You know what I mean? There wasn't a cross. It was just better to do it that way, right?
Yeah, for a number of reasons.
Right. Why did not the police follow that pattern? How come the police departments haven't merged?
That becomes more difficult in that if you think about the way fire works, we work as a team all the time. I mean, it's except for like a fire inspector going out on her own, almost everything we do is a rescue, a first aid call, whatever it might be. When you look at police officers down the end, you see them a lot by themselves, making their own decisions, following their rules by the laws that they work under, which have to do with local, ordinances and statutes. And so with that, they tend to be more isolated to the people they serve in the community they serve. And so that I think that's one of the reasons it's more difficult then to change, to be sharing that. There's been some attempts, to do it.
So it was discussed a little bit.
Yeah, it's been discussed over the years. The biggest thing that happens, in fact, we've seen in recent years, is cities like Millbrae and Half Moon Bay and San Carlos contracting with the sheriff's office, and that becomes somewhat of a merger because they absorb those people into the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office takes over.
Excuse me, just for a minute. I was surprised to hear that because I always thought that Millbrae had a police department. They did for the
They
longest
did
time.
for quite a while, yeah. But
Right. When did that get dissolved and the sheriffs picked it up, huh?
well, that's been about 10 years.
Has
I think,
it?
Yeah.
And that's cost effective, I guess, for
It
everybody?
seems to be working for them. They're pleased with it. It does, there's a cost savings there, and I'm no expert on, on the law side of it, but, the efficiency that comes with some organizations having more resources.
Right.
Especially for a small community.
Yeah.
Trying to build that into it.
Yeah.
Public safety is very expensive. If you look at most budgets, police and fire gobble up a whole bunch of it.
Yeah, they do.
And then public works is the other entity because of the infrastructure cost.
Yeah. I'm sure it drives our city manager, Lisa Goldman, goofy, but she's doing a pretty good job.
She is doing a very good job.
She's doing a pretty good job. So. All right. So out of the monthly calls the fire department receives, and I don't know how many you get, but you probably get quite a few. How many are medical related versus an actual fire?
Oh, medical is probably 75% on average. And I guess I've been out of it for a while, but I know they would do a lot. And that's why we put paramedics on the engines, because that's what we do.
When did that become sort of that became a requirement?
It wasn't a requirement. What happened back in the 90s, we were looking at the ambulance service at the time. We were thinking of providing that through the fire service, right?
Yeah.
So the fire chief at the time did a study on it, how we can do that. It never came about, but the fact that in the study we looked at how fast the fire engine gets there as compared to an ambulance, gets there a lot faster.
Right.
When you're dealing with something life-saving, a heart attack or whatever, as soon as you can put more definitive care on the patient, to the patient, made a big difference.
Yeah.
So that's why it was really not much of a difficult decision to make is let's put the primary care person in the position that gets there first.
So if you're a firefighter, if you're a paramedic, are you a firefighter as well, or are you just a paramedic?
You're a firefighter, paramedic.
And most of the guys are like that today, is that what you...
Most of the people, well, it goes back, and I'll tell you, I went through the growing pains of that when we first went paramedic. I had to train my guys to become paramedics at the time, and that's very costly. Takes a lot of time, and
Fire medics, is that what you just called it?
Fire medics.
Interesting. Okay.
Paramedics, they're fire medics. And we went through that and spent some money to try to get that to come in place. But now you'll find that most of the they hire paramedics and train them to become firefighters.
And where do you go to become a paramedic? Up to College of San Mateo?
College San Mateo, community colleges usually have it, and a lot of places do. And there's a lot out there. Most of the ambulance companies have paramedics on them. So there's most of the, not most, but many of the applicants that are paramedics are working for a private ambulance company.
So back in the day when you were coming up, there was no paramedics, and if you beat the ambulance there, you could only do what you could do.
I don't know if you remember the name Joe Aliamus.
Yes.
Joe Aliamus he taught first aid.
Yeah.
He was our first aid guy.
Right.
And when I first started, we get a medical call, and Joe Aliamus would have his '53 Chevy with his flashers. He took the thing up through his directional signals, get it so they'd flash.
Yeah.
And he'd drive like a bat out of you know what, and he tried to beat us to the call. And Joe would, he was our backup on it.
He was your backup.
Great guy. Police department, though, after a while said, we got to do something better.
Right.
Joe, you can't be driving around.
You can't be driving around like that, man. Oh, my
Good
gosh.
man. He's a great guy. Talking old time Burlingame.
Yeah. I can't remember the year, but were you the chief when the Chicken restaurant on Primrose caught fire? Yes. What year was that? Do you remember? Early 2000s, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think now. I remember that day my wife and I were getting ready to leave to go to one of the grandkids something or whatever it was. I got in the car and the call comes in. It went, fire. They went to second alarm. And I go, uh-oh.
And that was in the evening, wasn't it?
No, it was during the day.
It was during the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then went to third alarm. I go, I got to go. She goes, what are you doing? I turned the red lights on. She goes, what are you doing?
Can I slow you down for a minute? What does third alarm mean? First, second, and third alarm?
Initial response to a fire is the first alarm.
Okay.
Usually it depends. It varies on where it is and what it is. Could be 2 engines, a truck, and a battalion chief.
Yeah.
Second alarm, you duplicate that.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you're not without a battalion. Third alarm, then you duplicate it again. So you get more units
So
each time.
you know it's pretty serious when they
So
go
it's
to...
very, it's a third alarm. You know, I'm going. It's my town. I got it.
Right.
Thing. Anyway, just bring it in. I got down there. My wife's in the car with me. And she looks at me, she goes, "What do I do?" And I go, "I'll have ask one of the cops drive you home." You know, I'm going to work. And she goes, "No, I think I'll go shopping." It cost me $150 that day.
Oh, while Chicken is barbecuing, your wife is out on the avenue or something, right? Oh, my gosh. That's a fun fact, Bill. That's a fun fact.
Yeah, that was an interesting fire. It was actually difficult one we had because the fire got in. It was part of the flue had dislodged, I think, and that's how the fire spread in the attic space. It got in there. And it was difficult to fight it because usually we go into a fire like an attic, you get inside, you pull the ceilings, get some water up in there and vent the roof. You get a truck company up front, vent the roof. Well, the ceilings had been, they had boarded it up and they put some kind of paneling through it. So it wasn't just sheetrock. And the same thing when they're coming back on a roof, we had 2 layers of roofing and stuff. It was a heck of a time trying to vent that thing.
Oh, I bet.
And run in the attic. And we were trying to save remember the carpet store next door?
Right.
Had all the Persian short carpets and all that stuff.
Was that saved?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay.
We had a run-in with the owner, and was very upset. He was running out trying to get the carpets out when that fire was running the attic, and it started getting into that because it was a common space.
Right.
So I went in, I pulled him out. I said, "You can't be in here."
Yeah.
And he goes, "My car." I go, "I'll get it, guys. Do the best we can. We'll cover them, But and I don't, it's tough because a fire occurs, and this is one of the things I always try to promote. We like sprinkler systems because you could put it out real quick with not a lot of water. But when a fire occurs, you get that kind of devastation. It costs so much.
Yeah.
I mean, inventory, personnel costs. People lose their jobs. They're out of work for a long time. So being able to prevent it from happening certainly makes a lot more sense.
If the sprinklers go off in a grocery store, though, that causes a problem, right?
Any place it causes a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But fortunately, sprinkler systems are alarmed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We take care, mitigate the problem, then shut the system down.
Yeah. Was that one of the largest fires you've ever been at in Burlingame? No. Tell me about a big one.
Well, a couple of them came up. La Piñata, if you remember that fire.
Oh, I do. And let me ask you something. Did they reopen after that? I can't remember. I'm blanking now. I'm trying to remember what they did after that because,
Joe, we had a number of meetings with Joe Karp after that.
Right.
What he was going to do with the thing, and because that had gone through all the Burlingame Hotel, the rooms above as well.
Yeah. That's right. It was right next to the hotel, and the hotel got torched, right?
That was part of the building. They'd gone and went right through there. There's a light well that right under that. It burned right up through that, and that's how it got into the rooms and stuff. I got actually that fire is one of the ones I got blown out of. Neil Johnson and I were on a hose line going off Burlingame Avenue.
Neil Johnson, folks, was my neighbor, lived on Victoria right around the block. Right. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
The Johnson family's well presented in Burlingame Fire Department.
Yeah.
Harvey, who was assistant chief, his dad.
Over the years, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so you're back to the building there?
Yeah, so the fire kind of rolled. We had 2 lines in. The other crew looks over, the thing starts rolling on us, and the other crew took off. They backed out. I turned to Neil, we got to get out of here. And it came down really fast. That's when we used to have, we tried these plastic helmets for a while that had the face shields that came down.
Yeah.
I got outside, and Neil looked at me, and he goes, "Take a look at your helmet." My shield went.
All melted. Wow.
Yeah. But it was, that fire burnt pretty well. That went for quite a ways.
Was that something what started after the restaurant was closed, or did it start during hours?
After it was closed, after hours. Yeah, I think we got it down. It was a steamer. You remember they had the Mexican restaurant? They had the steamers for tortillas. I think that they shorted or whatever it is anyway. I think that was the final determination on that.
Yeah.
But if you remember all the grass they had, and if you remember the decorations,
absolutely. It had to go up in flames, man.
Never would have been able to do that today.
Right.
I mean, that's why the fire inspectors alone.
You got one more for me that you remember?
How about the Christmas fire in 1990 on right next to the Oldfield.
Oh, I don't remember that.
It's the old. Remember the old? There was an old theater that was behind that.
You know, somebody told me that. I didn't know that though.
That was one of the bigger. That went to 5 alarms.
No kidding.
Yeah, we fought that all.
When it's 5 alarms, are you getting help from Millbrae?
All over the place. Yeah,
all over.
We had in most of the county.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that fire, and it was a very cold night. It was Christmas Eve.
Oh, geez.
It was Christmas Eve. We had a fire earlier in over by Hillsborough, and I remember I went to that when I got back. Took the family, went to midnight mass, and my wife goes. She was giving me a bad time about not being, we left dinner early and all this other stuff. Anyway, so then this other one comes in at 12:30, 1 o'clock, something like that, and I go, I got to go, so I left. Didn't get back to the next night.
Oh, I bet.
So I missed Christmas Day.
You missed Christmas Day, sure. You got to work right through it.
But it was cold that night.
Yeah.
And at one point, I had taken to the front division on Burlingame Avenue side. We had another chief officer in the back, and they were getting some calls because we forgot, actually at the time I didn't remember about the old theater building and how it was interconnected to the two. Yeah. Anyway, so I was trying to get a look. I wanted to get up on a roof to take a look and see where the parapets were and everything else. So I got up the ladder truck. I jumped off.
So the hook and ladder's putting you up there? Yeah.
Well, the ladder's already up. I climbed up it, and I was taking a look, and one of the truck captain was up there doing the ventilation work. He yelled something at me, and I'm just jumping off the ladder, and I didn't hear him. And what he was yelling was ice.
Oh, man, you take a slip.
Boy,
yeah.
I took a Brody on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, were you hurt?
My pride.
Right, yeah. Okay.
A little sore, but mostly my pride.
Yeah, you felt the pain later, but the pride goes first. That's right.
Anyway, that fire did cause a lot of damage, multi-million dollars.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I just don't recall that one. Maybe I was just having too good of a time on Christmas Eve or something like that. But you can certainly hear the sirens from where I live in Burlingame. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we saved Copenhagen. So.
Yeah.
That 4-hour wall held.
Yeah, I'm sure that Ralph and Sherry and Duffy were very happy about that.
Yeah, Ralph was good.
Yeah. Just for the heck of it, kind of came across. I would just kind of thought just came in my mind. How much does a fire engine cost?
A lot. Last fire engine I bought.
$500,000?
No, that's the last one I bought.
Oh boy, that was back in
early
2007 or
2002.
Yeah,
2003. They're up over $1 million, I think. Now.
They are.
Yeah.
When do you decide that you need to replace a fire engine?
We used to spec them out. When I first came to work in '72, we were driving 20-year-old fire engines.
Yeah.
But they weren't driving them like they are now. We run so many more calls now, and distance, like we send engines all over the state in mutual aid.
Right.
So our equipment gets used a lot more.
Yeah.
Now they spec them to last maybe 12 to 15 years.
Is it by mileage or is it by years? In other words,
well, it's partially by mileage, but you got to think about it. A fire engine a lot of times will sit at a fire and pump for 20 hours. The engine's going and turning all this stuff. It's not going anyplace, so there's no miles going on.
There's no mileage,
but
we
it's
have, still pumping away.
You can check our pump. We get pump time on and stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the odometers show on that too. They have separate ones for them now, I think. But,
yeah.
Anyway, the equipment gets used differently, and it's interesting because in fact, I was just looking last night. I was looking at some stuff when after talking to you, I looked at some history. 1949 squad. I mentioned it earlier that when I first started was at that station on California Drive. It was 1949. Was still in service in '72.
Wow.
And that was our first out unit.
No kidding. Yeah. 1949 rig, huh?
Our first fire I went to was on that squad with Charlie Cook.
Jeez. With the great Charlie Cook.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness. What happens to the old trucks when it's time to turn it in? What do you do with that truck? What happens to it?
Oh, there's a market for them. They rehab them. They could sell them to other departments and stuff. We actually at one time I donated one to College of San Mateo to their fire firefighter program, I should say.
Academy.
We donated one many years ago to our sister city in Mexico.
Great.
Yeah. But there's a market for them afterwards.
So, hey,
usually we downgrade them.
When you donate a fire truck to Mexico, someplace in Mexico, They come up here, they fly up here, and then drive it back home? I mean, is that how else are you going to get it down there?
You drive it down. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
That was years ago. I don't think they've done one since for a long, long time. And when it was back in Reg Morby's days. So.
Oh boy, Charlie must be rolling over in his grave right now. But anyway, okay, it's time to buy a fire truck, right?
Yeah.
Where do you buy it? Where do you go to buy a fire truck, man? There's not any showcases around town.
Firetrucks.com. No, they've been buying Pierce, or we've been buying Pierce fire apparatus for a long time now. They're good, reliable. They're out of Wisconsin.
So do you go back to Wisconsin to check it out? Are you looking at a magazine, or what's the deal?
Oh, no, you spec it. It's spec. You have to draw up a set of specs, what you want. How do you want it powered? What do you want it to do? There's different types of fire.
Really?
Type 1s, Type 2s.
Yeah.
1,500 gallon pumper, 1250 pumper. Whatever you spec for you want.
Yeah.
Ours, we had an apparatus committee we put together. Firefighters, some officers, mechanic, to help design what we need. With the experience we've had with engines before. How can you make it better? What do we want to spec on the new ones?
Right.
And then you shop around to see who else is buying them, because they might already have specs drawn and already have it pre-bid. And then you get a better deal out of it that way.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's still the way it works, But and then once you make the order, there's times where you have to go inspect it. So you fly back there to check it out. Make sure everything's coming the way you want it, and then just before delivery, you go out and send personnel out for a road test and
like a little test drive,
acceptance, and
make sure
part of the
everything's
acceptance
working,
test, yeah.
During your career, how many times did you have to buy a truck? Just a couple of times, or what?
Oh, 4 engines in a truck. I think during the 10 years I was there.
Yeah.
We just bought, we bought 2 just when I first became. We're already spec'd, but they're. In fact, I mentioned when I first started, we had mostly 49s and stuff, and they bought some new engines. Reg Morby, Earl Higgins, and John Knutson went back to pick them up. They bought 2 engines in a truck at the same time.
Earl was a mechanic.
Earl was a mechanic.
Right. Was he the only mechanic at that time?
No, he had mechanic and assistant mechanic, Joe Giordano.
Oh, gosh, Joe, absolutely.
Yeah.
Joe and Rita Giordano. Yeah.
Rita was a saint.
She was. Sidebars, we invited them to our wedding.
I used to tell Joe that all the time.
Yeah. Joe had a little bit of a temper, but oh my gosh. So you're basically the guy that's in charge of purchasing that fire department, right? I mean, the fire truck.
Well, yeah, we spec it out, but I am not the expert. You got to do. And that's what
you got to take the guys.
As good as the people that you have with working with you, they're
right.
Smarter than I am.
So when it's time to buy that fire truck, are you going to Dennis or Jim Nantel and saying, "Hey, dude, I need a new truck," and their eyes are rolling?
Let me have $500,000.
Right. I mean, is that really what's happening there, or what? Or is it like in the budget?
Used to be, but it's one of the things we developed over the years. Actually, when Dennis was city manager. A replacement fund. So we budgeted every year. We put money aside.
Yeah.
So when it comes time to buy the engine, the money
have
there.
it. Yeah.
We did it for all our apparatus and rolling stock.
I think that's very sharp budgeting.
Absolutely.
I bet Lisa probably still does the same thing today.
I'm sure they
huh?
do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What were some of your biggest challenges as the chief?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I was so fortunate to work with the people I did.
Yeah.
But we had issues. I'm a union. Constantly have problems.
Right.
Personnel issues come up. They were challenges, but we always worked through them well. Mm-hmm. I can't say, some of even the hardest nosed people in the organization, we had respect for each other.
Right.
So we always be able to solve the problems. Budgets were always an issue.
Yeah.
I know I struggled when the first year I was chief. I had to cut staffing back because we run out of money at the end of the budget year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the way the budget laid out, our overtime budget was going way out of whack and everything else. So that was always a challenge, trying to get that staffing level right, being able to budget at the same time, looking at what was happening, financially with the city, on revenues coming in and the infrastructure needs. That's what the toughest thing for our guys to understand is, we're not the only ones here.
Right.
And especially when I go, the biggest problem you'll have, the complaints you'll get is when somebody can't flush the toilet or turns the water on and nothing there. Mm-hmm. Public Works is extremely important.
Oh, absolutely.
We got to keep our infrastructure strong.
Yeah.
And so we all have to help pay part of it, pay for that. And I used to have shift meetings during the year, try to keep everybody up to speed on what's going on.
And it's good for morale when you do that.
Oh, yeah. Some would argue the thing, but it's a challenge, but at the same time, it solved a lot of problems.
Yeah.
We brought everybody in on it.
Yeah. So Mike Matucci, who is our past police chief,
Mike, yeah.
Mike's terrific. I had him on a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him what was the biggest challenge for you, and he said today, right now, it was retention. It's retention of the guys, the turnover. They work for a couple of years and they take off, even though they're making pretty good money or whatever. They can't live here. You know what I mean? They have to go find a place that's affordable. Did you run into those problems in the early 2000s?
Yes, and to a certain extent, but not as much as the police did.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is scheduling. Is one of the things I faced. I mentioned my schedule earlier, the way I worked, when I was on shift.
Right.
When I was chief, they negotiated a shift change schedule where they work a 48-hour shift and then are off for 96 hours. That gave them the opportunity to commute.
Right.
So the good part for the firefighters, it was good. We were able to, our retention was there. We were fine. We weren't losing people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we didn't have locals.
Yeah.
It wasn't the same old fire department.
No, that's not. It wasn't.
No,
right?
It's not. They're good people. They
Absolutely.
work well. They're the thing, but and understandably, you can't afford housing. So how do you take care of that? How do you mitigate that problem?
Yeah.
Can't afford to buy my house.
But the shifting worked.
The shift worked.
Yeah.
It did work. I wasn't thrilled about it because you lose that connectivity, especially with my battalion chiefs. They were going for a 4-day and stuff. And if they're living out in Sacramento someplace,
you lose the camaraderie. You lose continuity.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they do. They hold it together pretty well.
Yeah. Gosh, some
and
of the
I'm
guys.
still proud of that department. Is still doing well.
Were you were not there for the remodel of the Taj Mahal on California Drive, the beautiful fire station? You were gone by then, weren't you?
No. I was assistant chief then.
You were.
Yeah.
What year was that?
That was early '90s. Yeah. 90,
Okay.
Trying to think. It was just before.
No kidding.
92, 93.
I thought maybe you had retired by then. It's been that long?
No, maybe 94, 95.
Jeez, that blows my mind, man.
I know, it doesn't seem like it.
I can't believe where the years went.
I know.
It's probably due for a remodel or something. It's a beautiful station.
Yeah, we had Malcolm Towns was chief at the time.
At the remodel?
Yeah.
My gosh. It was closed for a long time, wasn't it?
Well, we had a temporary unit. We had some portables in the yard there.
That's right, yeah.
We ran an engine out of there.
Yeah, that's right.
We moved the truck down on Rollins Road.
Right. Man. Okay, that's just... All right. What do you think people most misunderstand about firefighters or firefighting? What's the biggest misunderstanding?
There's a number of things that come up. I recall going back, going out shopping, stopping by the grocery store to buy groceries, buy dinner.
Right.
Why do you have to take that big truck? Or a medical call. Why do you have to take a big truck to a medical call?
Yeah.
I go, well, it's because we don't want to walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so understanding that it's a multi-purpose or faceted response. We have to be ready for anything and everything.
Yeah.
And so with that, you try to equip our units to do that. Fire engines carry a lot of equipment and can do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
We specialize a little bit. We have a heavy rescue for real heavy, technical stuff. Truck companies for, things, but, they respond together. So understanding how that works is certainly one. That's something I remember early on that people didn't understand.
Right.
The other aspect, too, is, the working, the shift work, is good and it's bad. And it's tough for families sometimes. Mm-hmm. I know my wife for many years never said a word when I was working shift work. I went on days, and that was hard. That was a hard move for me. Coming off something, I was a truck captain, enjoying what I was doing. Then I'm going into administrative role, working 40-hour a week and
whole different
home every
game.
night.
Right.
And I told her that when I was offered the promotion, I was telling her, God, I don't know, this could be a big difference, and Our daughter Kathy at the time was going to school for the deaf, and we were commuting back and forth with her. And I go, I won't have my days off do that. And she goes, well, we can make it work. And she finally told me, she goes, I hate it. You work at shift work.
Oh, I bet it's hard.
Yeah.
Because mom's there with the kids a lot of nights.
Oh yeah.
Dad's at work.
Yeah. My son used to take over the house. When I was at work, he thought he was the man of the house.
Right.
Him and my wife. Boom.
Yeah. Oh. How old is he today?
He's 50.
And your daughter?
My daughter, my other daughter is 46, and my youngest daughter passed away a few years ago.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
I know.
Yeah, that's tough.
Difficult for us.
Yep. All right. Do you ever still drop by any of these fire stations to see anybody, or do you kind of stay away, or what?
I don't go too much.
Right.
One of the things when I retired, Don Dornell became chief after me.
Right.
And when I retired, I told him, Don, because I was going to, after that, I started doing this emergency management stuff, and I was helping Hillsborough and Burlingame with John Parkin, and I were doing that. And I told him, I'll be around here, but if I say anything, you kick me right in the rear end and tell me to get out of here, because it's not my department anymore.
It's Don Dornell is the chief.
You're the chief. Yeah. Anyway, I still love the guys, So, but I still see them, And the engines stop by and they'll wave, and,
You're over on Devereaux?
Correct. Yeah, by Lincoln School.
Isn't Jack's over there?
Jack Van Etten. He's up on Casada. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're close to it. You guys are close to each other, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Since you retired, you've been in emergency management.
Right.
What's that about?
I do. Right now I'm working with Millbrae. I do their emergency plans, emergency operations plan. I train their people how to work in the emergency operations center, help train their CERT teams.
Where are you working out of when you do that?
Actually, the office I have right now is in Millbrae PD.
It is?
Yeah, which is sheriff's substation.
Yeah. Is it a 5-day-a-week thing for you, or how does that work?
No more than 20 hours a week. This is one of the things I agreed to do it.
Beautiful. And do you sort of set your own schedule with that? Are they expecting you to be there at a certain time, or what?
Well, it fluctuates a lot because of the needs. It depends on what they want. Sometimes I work weekends. Sometimes I have to go to a meeting at night or whatever it is. So, it's fine for me because I live close by.
Yeah.
So it's good for me. I think it's good for this. They seem to be pleased with my services so far.
I bet. And one other thing I thought was kind of interesting, in 2014, I think it was 2014, you came back as interim fire chief for South City?
That's correct, yeah.
I mean, you look at the want ads and they want a fire chief for 6 months or something.
It's interesting because at that point I'd been doing this thing with Burlingame and Hillsborough and stuff, and we stopped doing it. I actually wasn't working at all for a period of time there, and then I got a call from a recruiter, with a guy that was recruiting looking for an interim fire chief. South San Francisco at that time had gone to a public safety concept where the police chief was police and fire. And they decided, because they had some issues with it, going back to a strong fire chief again.
Right.
And so they wanted to, you're interested in doing that? And I don't know, Bill, come on, try it. So there's me and two other guys actually applied, for it. Anyway, so they picked me. So I agreed to do it. And city manager at the time, Mike Futrell, real dynamic guy, he's next submarine captain. He came in and he goes, all right, met with him and he goes, yeah, all right, Bill, I want you to start. When can you start? At that time, we had Nancy and I had planned to go with a group of friends to Europe. We were taking a cruise.
Oh, a little interruption here.
Yeah, so it was July. I remember coming back from the cruise on July 30th. He goes, that was a Sunday. We got back. He goes, I want you, July 31st, I want you to work.
Yeah,
8 o'clock, buddy. In uniform in the office.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, I did for 6 months. It was, I enjoyed it.
I bet.
It was good, but, it kind of reaffirmed the fact that I'm ready to retire now.
Yeah. Is South City a larger department than Burlingame?
Yeah, 5 stations, about the same as Central. 5 stations.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I'm close to my time here, so I got one or two more questions. If you hadn't have been a firefighter, if you hadn't have been a chief or firefighter, what the heck would you have done in life, Bill?
Well, like I said earlier, I was going to be a cop,
right?
Police, law enforcement. But I look back now. I don't know what else I would have done. I loved it.
Yeah. It shows, and we all know that. Yeah, we all know that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, before we close out, how about a couple of shout-outs to your family, friends, colleagues?
Oh, well, I look back over the years. I was fortunate, great city managers to work for, good councils.
Yeah.
In fact, it's interesting. It's still, I see some of the council members from Hillsborough and Burlingame.
Right.
Miss some of them that passed away and stuff, too.
We're very fortunate over the years to have such good councils, absolutely.
I just ran into Joe Galligan last week.
Yeah, he's living primarily back east now, I think.
Yeah, his
North
wife,
Carolina, South Carolina,
right,
something like that.
But he's back. In fact, him and Mike, his brother Mike, doing church.
Right.
Yeah. It's been fortunate to see those.
You and Nancy have been married for over 50 years.
55.
55.
We're working on 56.
Yeah, terrific. Congratulations.
She still puts up with me.
Yeah. Ray here, are you around 50 now, Ray? 50 years? What do you got? 53, and Kathy and I just hit 52. So, yeah. Yeah, it still works, right?
Yeah, it still works.
Bill, I don't know if I forgot anything or forgot to ask you, and I probably did, but I really want to thank you so much for being here today with me.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
You bet, Bill. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to thank Bill Reilly for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Thanks to my Minister of Podcasts, Mike Nagler, video by the great Ray Tyler, my Director of Marketing, Adrian Kwok-Lucchese, original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at bray.com. This episode was written, produced, and directed by Mark at the Mic and recorded on Friday, March 28, 2025, at the Burlingame Public Library. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this podcast, and no part can be copied and replayed without the written consent of the Burlingame Historical Society. And before I close out, be sure to look for my next episode where I sit down with the sandwich shop czar, Reno Betty, founder of Sam's Sandwiches. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.